G'day, it's fugitive Australian journalist Shane Dowling from the website and YouTube channel Kangaroo Court of Australia. Now, during the week, the United States announced they're going to review the AUKUS deal with Australia and also the UK. And obviously the big question everyone was asking is Donald Trump trying to rip off Australia again? And I've just published an article on it, and I'll read out that article. And it's titled, "Is Donald Trump Trying to Shake Down Australia with the $368 billion AUKUS Deal?" And it starts off, the $368 billion AUKUS deal between Australia and the US and the UK for 8 submarines we'll likely never get is Australia's biggest fraud scam. So, when the Donald Trump administration announced on Thursday they were reviewing the AUKUS deal, the first thing that came to mind is Donald Trump trying to rip off Australia even more. Every grifter on both sides of politics, the Labor Party and Liberal Party, seems to have their snout in the trough, with even Scott Morrison being welcomed back into the fold by the Labor and Liberal parties for a piece of the action. From when Donald Trump started campaigning for the presidency, and in the weeks after he was inaugurated in January 2025, trolls were everywhere on the internet saying what a great job he would do. But when Donald Trump's grifting became obvious, with such things as the Trump coin cryptocurrency, the trolls disappeared quickly. So with Donald Trump's main goal of his presidency being to make as much money as he can, and with a long list of Australian political grifters trying to cash in on AUKUS, it points to a possibility that the so-called review by the Donald Trump administration is nothing more than an attempt to shake down the Australian government for more cash. Bribery in the defence industry is rife. Former Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison and his mates cashed in on the deal with the French and then cancelled the deal and did a runner with the cash. Now Morrison and his mates are trying to cash in on AUKUS. In May 2020, I published an article titled, "Has Scott Morrison's best mates, David Gazzard and Peter Costello, again fraudulently profited from Australia's $90 billion Liberal Party submarine slush fund?" which starts off, Australia's $90 billion submarine contract was only finalised in 2019 after Scott Morrison's best mates, David Gazzard and Peter Costello, were cut in on the action by Morrison. That alone says there needs to be an open and public inquiry into the contract. On Wednesday, the 6th of May 2020, further details were reported about suspect financial decisions regarding the deal. The Australian Defence Force approved Australian taxpayer-funded pay rises and bonuses for the staff of the French-owned naval group, even though the project is already billions of dollars over budget and years behind schedule. In September 2021, I published an article titled, "France had Scott Morrison's mate, David Gazzard, put on the payroll for the $90 billion submarine scam. Has Morrison pulled off one of the biggest stings ever?" which starts off, the submarine contract with France, who have a long history of bribing other countries for defence contracts, was always a major scam that blew out from a $50 billion to $90 billion deal in a couple of years, with millions flowing into the hands of the Liberal Party cronies. France openly had several Liberal Party cronies on their payroll, including Scott Morrison's close friends, David Gazzard and Peter Costello. So they thought they owned the Australian government, and that is why the French are so mad with Morrison cancelling the deal. As with most major frauds, it's a case of following the money to find the truth. I've been following the money in this matter since 2016 with a number of articles. In March 2023, I published an article titled, "Nine Chairman Peter Costello is now promoting war with China after making millions lobbying for defence companies," which starts off, Nine Entertainment-owned papers have been talking up the prospects of Australia going to war with China while failing to declare that Nine Chairman Peter Costello has made millions of dollars in recent years lobbying on behalf of defence companies. Former Prime Minister Paul Keating has also stuck his head up while never declaring he was and possibly still is on China's payroll. An executive editor of the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, Tory Maguire, is sleeping with the enemy. What do I mean by Tory Maguire sleeping with the enemy is that her partner is a Liberal Party lobbyist, which is a huge conflict of interest given they're putting out propaganda for the Liberal Party. One of the numerous articles on this matter is Nine's Red Alert series is titled, "Australia Faces the Threat of War with China Within 3 Years and We're Not Ready," which is written as a statement of fact but is only an opinion piece, which I find pathetic as it is blatant warmongering. The first question that should be asked is who benefits from propaganda like that? Australia's submarine planning. Australia's plans for new submarines have been in the pipeline for over 15 years, but nothing has been achieved. So why would we trust the government now with AUKUS? Australian comedian Mark Humphries sums up what a joke it is in a video he posted on Twitter, and I'll show you that video now.
With our new fleet of submarines, if conflict arises in our region, Australia will be ready. As long as that conflict arises in the late 2030s, because we won't have any new subs until then, okay? What we're saying to our adversaries is, come at us. Again, sometime in the late 2030s would be best for us. Brisbane's hosting the Olympics in 2032, so ideally if it could be after that. With this move, Australia is establishing itself as a power in the Pacific region. Actually, now that I think about it, 2040s would be better if you must come at us. It's just that, you know, there's often like building delays, cost blowouts, you know how these things tend to go. Yeah. But one thing you can be sure of, when Australia says we're going to build some submarines, we mean it. Except for the 12 submarines we proposed building in the 2009 Defence White Paper. And the Japanese submarines we planned to buy back in 2014. And the French submarines we agreed to buy back in 2016. We're basically Julia Roberts in Runaway Bride if all the grooms were submarine contracts. But this time we definitely mean it.
Australian grifters. The number of grifters trying to cash in on AUKUS is growing by the day. I published an article in September 2024 titled "The Labor and Liberal Party Politicians Set to Make Millions from the AUKUS Money Train, the AUKUS Scam Exposed," and followed up with another article in January 2025 titled "How Liberal Party's Joe Hockey Steals from the $368 billion AUKUS Fraud Scam from Cradle to Grave." I got links to both those articles in relation to the article I'll publish on Sunday. My article goes on to say, the latest to join the AUKUS gravy train is Yaron Finkelstein, who was chief advisor to former Prime Minister Scott Morrison when he signed up to the AUKUS Pact. Yaron Finkelstein showed up in evidence during the Bruce Lemon Brittany Higgins Parliament House rape scandal. He was Morrison's hatchet man who swept the corruption under the carpet. Just for the record, Scott Morrison signed the AUKUS deal, as I wrote in 2021. Scott Morrison's announcement of the Clayton's deal with the US and UK for nuclear submarines achieves nothing but to shine a light on the original scam further. As journalist Peter Harcher from the SMH says, below there is no deal with the US and UK. There is only an agreement with the US and UK to possibly come to an agreement in the future, which is a joke, not worth the choreographed announcement between Morrison, Joe Biden and Boris Johnson that happened. And I'll show you a short video of Peter Harcher on the drum in 2021, which explains what a joke that deal was with Scott Morrison.
There's a big trade-off here, isn't there? Scott Morrison is telling us that in return for getting the capability to have nuclear propulsion, now we're not talking about nuclear weapons, just nuclear propulsion, for a design of submarine yet to be determined.
And the reason that's better is for stealth reasons. It's quieter, like...
Well, actually, it's not quieter.
Oh.
The diesel subs that Australia currently has and the ones it was planning to get are actually quieter because you can turn off the engine completely and they go absolutely silent. With a nuclear unit, you can't switch it off completely. It has to. The nuclear plant has to keep running. So the advantages with a nuclear nuclear boat are, like Morrison was saying, they can go faster underwater, they can stay underwater much longer, they can stay on station much longer and carry larger loads. But the trade-off that Morrison is now telling us Australia's going to have to accept is that, you know, yesterday Australia had a contract to buy 12 submarines built in Adelaide on a French design. Today, Australia has no contract for anybody to supply us any submarines whatsoever. We have a high-level political agreement to supply us with US-UK nuclear propulsion technology, but we have no contract, no boat in which to put this thing. So the Morrison government tells us today that we're going to have to wait longer now. So until today, it was going to be more than a decade to get the first new sub. Now it's going to be even longer than more than a decade, possibly up to 2 decades to get the first new sub.
Could be 2040 is what we're told,
Yeah. Second, it's going to cost more, the government tells us. Third, that they've committed, conceptually at least, to buying only 8, whereas the previous deal was to buy 12 submarines. They're saying, oh, well, they're more capable, so you don't need as many. But we're going to have to wait longer. The Collins-class submarines, which were supposed to be retired in 2025, they keep postponing their retirement. I hope my retirement doesn't get postponed as many times as these poor labouring subs. They're going to be in the water till 2040 and beyond. So, you know, we're going to have no new subs, pay more. There's no design. The only thing the government has actually specifically done today is said that it is creating an interdepartmental task force to find, quote, the optimal path to getting Australia to acquire the nuclear technology, which could then lead to a design and a negotiation for a contract. This is, this is a great theatrical production we saw this morning. Hats off. That was high value theatrics, but behind the theatrics, behind the curtains, there's just a couple of step ladders and a bunch of bureaucrats at a meeting table, and that's about it.
It is Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and the federal Labor government that negotiated the final AUKUS deal and came up with a $368 billion price tag. Some reports say the terms of the AUKUS contract are so bad for Australia that the US and UK don't have to deliver the submarines if they decide not to. And Australia can't get our money back if they don't. I think there's a good chance the AUKUS fraud scheme will be both Scott Morrison's and Anthony Albanese's legacies as Prime Minister. And it's not something they're going to be proud of. And Scott Morrison, well, he really doesn't care. He's a fraudster from start to finish. And Anthony Albanese, well, he's the one who should have finished off Scott Morrison's career in any sort of public manner by setting up a genuine National Anti-Corruption Commission, but he failed to do that, and he's the one who's ultimately protecting Scott Morrison. So it looks like Anthony Albanese's protection of Scott Morrison is going to come back to bite him in a huge way, and he's only got himself to blame for it. Anyhow, make sure you visit my website, Kangaroo Court of Australia, on Sunday the 15th of June 2025, and that article will be up there. And I'll have a lot of links to the further information for previous articles I've published. I've been investigating the submarine dodgy deals since at least 2016, so I've written quite a few articles on it, especially on Scott Morrison and his mates, David Gazzard and Peter Costello, profiting from the submarine deals. Anyhow, please do you a bit and help shine a light on corruption and share this video on social media. And I'm an independent journalist, so I'm 100% crowdfunded from viewers like yourself. So please support my Patreon account or PayPal account. The links for them are below this video on YouTube and also on my website. Or you can go to my website on the donations page. There's other donation options. Please hit the like and subscribe button and notification button. That way you get notified every time I publish a new video. Other than that, thank you for your time and have a good day.